It is December 2nd. As we said, the day after Giving Tuesday. So hope everybody who participated and had some communication with their donors saw great results from Giving Tuesday campaigns and kind of through this year-end push for kind of year-end giving. So I know we were lifting up Give DSM, and I'll remind you again in our session to add your funding needs for your organization to our Give DSM platform, to your profile. But I wanted to start out today, if we can just go to the next slide, Barb, with our typical announcements, network announcements, or actually, reminder. Not like we've been doing this every week for months now. The goals of this session really to build trusting relationships and share knowledge and resources with the Central Iowa nonprofit sector. It's been so great to have Wednesday mornings at community circles to really touch base with everybody when we're working remotely. And our expectations are always to center our dialogue around our common goals and remain rooted to equity and inclusion. And then just as housekeeping, it looks like we're all doing well on that. But if we could turn off our video and go on mute during the presentation, and then we'll invite you to turn that video on and your microphones on for the breakout sessions. So let's go to the next slide here, our announcements. So we have Cassandra Halls on the call today, and she'll be part of the second half of the presentation. But she's also been doing a lot of work around the firehouse and the RFP for shared space and strategic alignment there. So wanted to just give a shout out that those responses are due on the 18th at 5, and you can go to firehousecampus.org to learn more. Cassandra, I would invite you to chime in if you have anything else that you wanted to share. You can feel free to go on camera and turn your microphone on.
Thanks, Brianne, for the opportunity to just touch base on the Strategic Alliance RFP. Critical milestone this week in that we are hosting another building tour tomorrow, actually at 2 p.m. So the opportunity with the Strategic Alliance RFP at the Firehouse is that we are looking for nonprofits that would like to expand programming or seeking space in a unique nonprofit environment. So really an interesting project. And if you would like to learn more, please reach out. Please join us for the tour tomorrow. There's some really cool opportunity with being a partner at the Firehouse.
Great. All right. Thank you. We'll see you again in a little bit.
Sounds good.
And then I did want to call out Ivy College of Business at Iowa State is seeking service learning projects. So the deadline for submitting those is this week. And then Polk County DCAT is hosting a session on transforming conflict with Iowa Mediation Service. Had the opportunity to meet last year with Iowa Mediation and the folks at Polk County DCAT, and they're just great people. So that's a free session. And then Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity is hosting a virtual advocacy 101 training. So really, if you're in the housing space and you want to get involved in advocacy, that's a free opportunity coming up. And all of the links to learn more and register for these will be in our nonprofit link newsletter that's coming out this week. I will try and pop the Ivy College link, since that is coming up so quickly, into the chat in a little bit here. But I did want to call those out. So if anybody else has any announcements from your organization, feel free to pop those in the chat, and then we'll go to the next slide. All right, so our agenda today, as I mentioned in my reminder email, it's a double feature. So pop your popcorn and get ready because we'll start with our friends at DSM Hack this morning, really talking about remote collaboration. So we've been doing this thing for 9 months now. And so there have maybe been some successes, some pain points. I think we anticipate we'll be working remotely and collaborating, not just because of COVID, but certainly, thinking through this new age and era that we're entering in our workforce, and how we'll be collaborating into the future. So we're going to invite them to talk a little bit more about what they do and give us some tips and tricks. And then in the second half, you can break out and do a little bit of a deeper dive with the DSM Hack folks. Or as I mentioned, Cassandra will be presenting on the Iowa Nonprofit Alliance concept and next steps with Paul Thiele from the Larned A. Waterman Iowa Nonprofit Resource Center. He's on the team that has been collaborating really with Cassandra and a group to bring this concept forward. So I will invite our DSM Hack folks to turn on their screens, or I guess their video. And if you'd like, I've got Lynn here, and then Maya, Darren, Molly, Michael. We have a whole crew. All right. Well, welcome this morning. I'll let you kind of take it away and start with a general overview of who DSM Hack is. And Barb will just go to the next slide for them while they do that.
Cool. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So there were a few folks mentioned that weren't in the board, but that's okay. Molly is here, and Darren and Mitch. I thought I saw Ethan come in, maybe. He's not showing his video, but there are a number of us on the board that are here to represent. And so, guys, if I forget to mention something important, please just pop in. I am the current president, and there are a number of board members, including nonprofit chair and treasurer and others. So what is DSM Hack is probably one of your main questions, and I'm about to explain. So about 7 years ago, a group of people got together and said, hey, you know what? We're in IT. Nonprofits need IT. So let's bring those things together. And what they started is what we continue now. And we have a flagship event every year where we gather about 100 IT professionals, and they volunteer their time and actually pay to do it for 48 consecutive hours. And they organically form teams and build amazing software solutions for nonprofits for no cost for the nonprofits. So it's really an amazing solution, and because we build to the solutions that are needed for that nonprofit. And it's a 48-hour amount of chaos filled with energy and lots of coffee and monster drinks and some beverages that are alcoholic, like beer, because you gotta like encourage these IT professionals. But we keep it cool. And lots of food and lots of learning and collaboration and building lots of great networks. So over the 7 years that we have been doing this, we have helped more than 72 nonprofits. We've had over 600 volunteers. Like I said, they actually pay to do this. They pay about $25, and that's so that they can have skin in the game. They do get a really cool t-shirt. See my t-shirt. And then we've had over $1 million of in-kind services donated. So that is us. Molly, Darren, Mitch, Ethan, did I forget anything?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the nonprofit side, and then maybe Darren and Mitch can talk a little bit more about the tech collaborations. I am our nonprofit chair right now. I know some of you from my previous life in the nonprofit world, and we know that, one of the reasons the hackathon began is that we wanted to do a better job of connecting tech folks to nonprofit folks and being able to better understand their needs, their time constraints, their just kind of overall everything that nonprofits have going on. And so the idea is to simplify that. So we do have an application. So the idea is the nonprofits come to us with a specific problem they want to solve or something that they want to build. And we kind of help with that process. So the recruitment with nonprofits is talking to them about the projects that they're interested in doing. We usually have some events leading up to it to talk about, okay, we could probably solve that in 8 hours. You got 48 hours. Like, what else can we do? And really get solid projects, because then the board goes through a selection process. We try and pick lots of different kinds of nonprofits working on lots of different kinds of issues for a diversity of the issues that we want to support, but then also different kinds of problems and different kinds of technology solutions, so that our IT professionals have this really cool creative opportunity to try new things, be really creative, and ultimately we're building these really long-lasting relationships with IT professionals, nonprofits. Nonprofits get to connect with each other, and then just sort of this whole community aspect that comes together over our 48 hours. And so I really work to recruit nonprofits to let them know who we are and what we do, and then help them put together really solid proposals so that we can enhance, their opportunity to get selected there. I should caveat that we are not going to be able to do our hackathon this year. So one of the things, due to safety concerns, I suppose I should mention, though you all probably already know that, when you put hundreds of people in a room together, that's a little frowned upon right now. And we want to make sure that we're still connecting with the community and really building these relationships in the meantime, so that, when we get to come back, we have really excited new nonprofits, new projects, and can kind of continue to carry that forward. So that's a little bit about the nonprofit side. And yeah, Darren, if you want to talk tech.
Sure, and I'll kind of tag team with Mitchell here, but so a lot of us in the tech community in Des Moines has had to kind of immediately dive into a lot more remote work than we'd done before. And I think there was, with the company I work for, there was a lot of fast experimentation. We have a lot of different teams, not a lot of very pretty flat organizations. So the teams have a lot of autonomy on what tools they use. And that resulted in a lot of people trying a lot of different things, figuring out what works, and then everybody meeting up every once in a while to talk about what's working, what's not working, how do we use technology? Because one of our biggest strengths was the ability to sit in the same room and collaborate and work face to face and grab that whiteboard or pass the keyboard to somebody else. And so how do we do that now when we're all remote? A couple of the ways that we're doing that are, my team, for example, will use, we use Google Hangouts. You can use Google Hangouts, Zoom, Teams. We can talk more about those later, but we use that to just kind of stay always in communication with each other. It's basically, we basically have an open line all the time, talking to each other. Somebody can chime in and say something, and having that collaboration time is kind of what we've found to be our big strength. And then those tools that I think we've all used a little bit before all this, but they really do have these online collaboration features, like your Google Docs, your different tools like that. So there's a lot of tools that we've kind of found that are working really well. And continuing to experiment and just say, like, all right, how are we going to make this work, and not giving up with going off and working solo all the time, figuring out collaboration's our strength. So how do we make that happen now?
I've seen, speaking of the Google Suite, I was on a training this week and they featured Google Jamboards. So I don't know, that was my first exposure to Jamboards. But if you are in an environment where you're using like sticky notes up on, and everybody's kind of writing ideas and things, the Google Jamboard feature is a really helpful way of doing that remotely and kind of having everybody edit in the same document, which is really fun. So just wanted to chime in because that kind of blew my mind this week when I was in a session.
We're doing a lot. Sorry, Darren. I was just going to say we're doing a lot of that, sharing what works, because there's a lot of things going on now. Darren.
Yeah, Jamboard is one I haven't used, and I'm totally going to, because it looks like a tool that I have been using, which is Miro, and it's another virtual whiteboard solution. And that's the thing that my team noticed that we were missing the most, is like, we got a hard problem. We just need to go get in that conference room and everybody grab a marker, get it on that whiteboard. And this became a way where we could actually kind of still do that again. It shows you can put sticky notes up there. You can draw things up there. We've drawn diagrams of how we're going to do this. We've drafted emails in there, planned different things. and then it stays. So the free version of it, you get only 3 boards. But I have yet to find the limit of a board. This isn't like a 4 foot by 8 foot board.
So you could
It
have
goes
like a
miles.
department board that kind of keeps going. Good. Well,
Yeah, you can get
I did,
lost, but-
you mentioned Miro. And so I am going to drop into the chat again on this session I was in. There was a great resource, Hyper Island toolbox, and they have a remote team tools, team collaboration links to explore. And so Miro, which you mentioned, along with Mural, which I know we featured in a previous session, are both in that whiteboard and post-it notes for collaborative workshops. But that Google Jamboards is also an option as well. So good. Any other thoughts there?
I think, from my perspective, I've been a remote worker for the last 11 years. So for me, COVID's just been like, finally, everybody sees it my way now. And it is very interesting that everything is absolutely dependent upon every single team. And I think that's the biggest thing. There's so many tools in the toolbox that it's all going to depend on like which one works well for you. In the nonprofit space, though, I think it's really important as you look at all of these different things that are out there, almost all of them have either nonprofit specific pricing, are free for nonprofits, or have a way to get pricing to be reduced or free. So like TechSoup has a bunch of resources specifically divided out towards COVID specific things, but then as well as everything else, Office 365, and Windows and those kinds of things. But also, 3/4 of the ones that are out there for any sort of collaboration, sending an email to their contact people and say, hey, I'm a nonprofit, we want to use this tool. Oftentimes it'll get you a 50% or greater discount. And I think that in the rush to collaborate, sometimes there's a lot of, we'll just pay a little bit. It's not that expensive. But even if it is only a $5 a month or $10 a month kind of thing, you might be able to save even more, which I think is important as you work to support that remote collaboration, making sure that you do it in a cost-effective manner as well.
Yeah, a lot of these things have like $5 per user per month, but you get like 5 of those and now you're at $25 per user per month, and it can add up. So looking within the ecosystem you've got, if you're Office 365, be taking a look at SharePoint and Teams, and you don't need to pay for Slack, for example, because you've got those tools within what you're already paying for typically.
Yeah, SharePoint, our organization just moved to, and it's kind of been revolutionary for us just this past week. It takes a little bit of time to get used to doing things differently, but already we've been seeing that as an important collaboration tool. So good. And I would invite anybody participating, if you have kind of a favorite tool that your organization has used and really leaned into during this time, I'd invite you to add that into the chat as well.
And I think you brought up a good point, Brianne. I think the one thing that we have to keep in mind when we're thinking about technology solutions is that there is a little bit of a learning curve, and usually, and some adaptation, and depending on, the number of staff folks have with their nonprofit, likely an IT professional is not on there. And so I think as we continue this conversation today, and maybe as we break out into small groups, one thing that would be great to talk about is we have this interesting year that we're trying to see as an opportunity here. And so are there ways that we can continue to connect nonprofits to technology options, to technology, individuals, in order to, in the meantime, work through some of these things together, because you all have so much on your plate and so much good work that you need to do. What are some easy, quick solutions, whether it's video tutorials or I don't know. But it would be great to brainstorm some of those with nonprofits today so that, we can continue to be kind of a moderator between those worlds for folks.
Yeah, so I think that's what we'll do in our breakouts, and we'll move to those shortly. But we'll have the opportunity for one of the rooms, maybe breakout room one, to be specifically like what are the nonprofit needs that they can communicate back to you. So Molly, I don't know if you'll want to be in that room or who else, and then we can move to another breakout room. Or how do you each want? I wasn't sure how many of you there would be. So we can do a breakout room each for Lynn, Mitchell, and Darren, or you three can be in a room together, and those can be more of a deeper dive troubleshooting kind of conversation. What works best for you guys?
Why don't you put me and Molly in where with anybody that wants to be interested in
Okay.
finding out more about how to apply what a project might look like for that. And then anything like tech related, why don't you put, I don't know, how many people do we have on the call? Just this screen full? Yep. Maybe put them just Darren and Mitch together.
Okay, great.
Or, oh, no, we have two screens full. Do you guys want to separate? And we also have Ethan, I think, still.
I wanted to share, and I'm going to try also with SharePoint, so bear with me, everybody. I included a link, and hopefully anybody here can kind of download this. Last October, we did a training session with DSM Hack, and you guys provided basically this outline sheet of here's what you need to know about your technology to talk to like a help desk, or if you want tech people to speak the language with you and troubleshoot, these are the fields that you should work to know about your own domains and things like that. And so I included a link, and I'm hopeful. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up maybe if you're able to. Thumbs down. Okay, thumbs down. Well, I'll try and figure out how to share a file, and I might just share it out kind of in an email afterwards. To say, here's all of these different fields that you guys recommend. So let's go to maybe the next page, Barb. I think I have the breakout information on here. So we'll have folks, we'll transition in a minute to breakouts. So I'm going to ask you to change your name. If you are going to be in room one with Molly and Lynn, and you want to talk about projects for DSM Hack, okay, and Darren shared this as a Google Doc, the option I was going to put in there. So if you want to be in room one, please indicate that. Room two will be more of like a tech help desk kind of moment. And then in the main room, we'll invite Paul and Cassandra to share a little bit more about the Nonprofit Alliance. So if you don't put a number in front of your name, you will be assumed to be in the main breakout room and learning more about the Nonprofit Alliance. So I'll just invite you, and DSM Hack team, if you could also indicate the number in front of your name, change your name in Zoom, that helps us to help people self-select into the breakout room of their choice. So we'll get assigning those here in just a minute. And I see in the chat, Dr. Wayne is interested in being in number one as well. So, okay. So you can also assign to the chat. I know that there were some folks also DSM Hack that were interested in really getting a like a tech savvy person on their board, thinking about like the skill sets that are really important for their board members and recognizing an opportunity there. So there might be some questions or conversation about what that could look like too. So I am.
And that could go to either room, whichever they're more interested in.
Great. Okay, so I am going to give everybody like 5 seconds to make your final choices, and then we'll break you out into those rooms, and I'll invite Cassandra and Paul to start sharing their video in the front. So it looks like we have a few more people in breakout room one, and then two will be a small group, but that's sometimes really helpful for troubleshooting actual things. All right, I'm going to open the rooms and we'll get started with the Nonprofit Alliance concept here. All right. Okay, I think we've got everybody who indicated a room is joining. So Paul and Molly, I think you should be assigned. So take the opportunity to join out, and then I'll invite Paul and Cassandra to just start walking us through. And I think I have a blank screen. Or do you guys have any items that you want to pull up on the screen?
It would be great if we could share the concept paper.
Certainly. I will make you a co-host. Cassandra, do you have that handy?
I do.
Okay, great. I will make you a co-host once I figure out where you're living on. Oh, you're in the main. Okay. There we go. Nope, I don't want to make you the co-host, Monica. Sorry, you moved. Okay, all right. Yes, there you go.
Okay. Let me.
Yeah, if you can stop share, that would be great. Good. Okay, Cassandra, if you want to pull up that and then you can kind of walk through. And Paul, hi. I get to start and end my day with you, which is really exciting.
Brianne, can you give me a thumbs up? Are you seeing the concept paper? Is that up on the screen? Okay. So we'll do just some really quick introductions here. My name is Cassandra Halls, and seeing a lot of familiar names and faces on the screen today, which is great. And excited to be able to share with you the work that we've done in researching and starting to pursue the opportunity of creating a nonprofit alliance for nonprofits within the state of Iowa. So my role with the project, I have been serving as the project manager and research analyst, pulling together all of the remaining questions that we have for feasibility. And then I'll have Paul introduce himself. He has been a critical member of our leadership group driving the initiative as well. So Paul.
Thank you, Cassandra. Good morning, everyone from Iowa City. Great to see you all. I'm Paul Thiele. I'm the director of the Larned A Waterman. So it's really great to be with you this morning, and I'm eager to answer any of your questions.
So Paul and I will do just a really quick overview of how the concept has evolved over time. And then we'll give a quick update as far as where things are at today. So Paul, I'm going to roll through the concept paper here really quickly, and please jump in on any of the points. So essentially about 3 years ago, we had a team of nonprofit leaders here in Iowa that really recognized Iowa was missing a collaborative, cohesive, organized association to support the great work of the nonprofit sector. So in the concept paper here, you can see our leadership committee that has been driving the project has included Deanne Cook. Thanks, Paul, for the note in chat. Deanne Cook with the United Ways of Iowa, Brianne Fitzgerald, Emily Shields, Paul, and then Matt Unger with DMARC. And where we started is the group was actually able to engage SPPG to do an initial round of research to just understand some of the challenges the sector were facing, what the sector could use in the form of additional supports, and just basically ask the question of would an association add value? And what the survey shared, there were roughly 200 nonprofits of varying sizes that participated in the initial survey. And what we learned is that the places that would add the most value were around fundraising, advocacy, and professional development. But what the survey also indicated, and what the research SPPG did indicated, is that there were some next steps that the group needed to take in order to do a deeper dive to learn a little bit more about how to ensure an association would be successful. So in early 2020, and I will smile as I say this, we actually launched the next effort of work at the same time COVID was happening. So literally our first meeting was at the beginning of March, and then obviously everything happened with COVID. But what we did is we actually formed a feasibility committee to take a look at some of those outstanding questions that weren't addressed by the initial round of research by SPPG, and to really vet the concept and the feasibility. Could this idea work and be successful in Iowa? Because the last thing we want to do is create an association that isn't positioned for success. So we organized a feasibility committee representing different nonprofit interests, different nonprofit entities across the sector, as well as across the state of Iowa. So we tried to capture a really great perspective as we looked at what was remaining for discussion. We also did research from a national perspective, so looking at some of the best practice models of associations from across the nation. These included Minnesota, Illinois, Mississippi, and then we also spent some time with the University of Oregon and their nonprofit management program. So a couple of key things that we learned from those discussions, how important it is that we are able to clearly articulate the value of the association, determining strategies, particularly for Iowa, that can serve both nonprofits in the urban regions as well as the rural regions. With that note, they're recognizing the needs are quite different. And then the power that we can create in just organizing the network of nonprofits. It's exciting to be part of this conversation today and what the Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines has done, because these definitely are the first steps to strengthening the sector. So the interesting thing was, in our first meeting, we had anticipated feasibility for the concept would take from basically March until August of this year. But with the pressing circumstance of COVID, it was really easy for the feasibility committee to identify the definite need for an association with the state of Iowa. There were opportunities that we were missing in terms of having one voice, being able to pursue funding support, to be able to capture data in a way that we were able to ask all of the questions and share information back. So priorities that really came to the top from our discussion for a nonprofit alliance or association to be able to serve were around advocacy, strengthening the network, providing opportunity for education. And then the fourth priority, which I'll say right out of the gate, and I'll look at Paul as I say this, definitely having the opportunity to strengthen buying power of the sector is something that we are interested in, but probably not the place where we will start. So it seems the greatest area for opportunity is definitely around advocacy at this point.
Can you share a little bit more about buying power and kind of what that means? I know there's some more information here, but just what might that look like?
For sure. So a great example is just even as we're all participating on Zoom, there are powers in numbers. So one of the things that the nonprofit of the Midlands has been able to do is, because of the number of memberships that they have as part of their organization, they are able to negotiate on behalf of the sector better pricing. So through having a membership with the association from the Midlands, Zoom is available for all of their nonprofit members at a much more discounted rate. I know there's a lot of interest around benefits and things of that nature, but there's some work that we have to do on the advocacy side to make that possible in Iowa. So right now, as folks think about having a place where we could do a collective health insurance plan, a retirement plan, we're not able to do that in Iowa right now. So
interesting.
there's
Okay.
And I can add just an example of that now, where, so for example, we're partnering next week with the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits at our center. So if you are part, if you get an email from us, and we're happy to share that here.
I just saw that. Yeah, we'll make sure that in the closing we get that information out there, Paul.
Thank you.
Sure, and that's something special this edition. But for example, you have just saved $50 for your participant if you have a member of your state association in Iowa. So the return on that investment, those powers of scale, and we see this in other state associations, and even looking at something like DSM Hack, being able to connect professionals who are offering services with nonprofits who can use those services that's a huge advantage, right, for those people in terms of price for those services. And so across a large spectrum is where you can get kind of return on investment in that way, depending upon what the focus of your organization might be. Understanding that nonprofits vary from very volunteers to very, very large organizations, so that the purchasing power piece will vary.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. We're having a little bit of trouble. I think your connection is a little weak, but we hear you, and we'll get that chat, that Minnesota opportunity chatted at the end when we call everybody back. So thank you for that. Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I know that the benefits was a big question that I get a lot. So thanks.
No, thank you for the question, Brianne. That was great. So with our value proposition, so we've continued to work through not only feasibility, but starting to shape what we can do in a startup phase for the organization. And so we have defined our value proposition here. Iowa Nonprofit Alliance is the only statewide membership association dedicated to advocating and creating an opportunity for the nonprofit sector as a whole, offering connection to peers, training, vital communication, and access to critical resources. Our goal here is not to duplicate any efforts that are underway with other regional organizations, but really wanting to be a place where we can bring everybody together. So as we move into phase 3, so phase 1 was research, phase 2 was feasibility. Now we are at a point where we are moving into phase 3. And we're also trying to be really sensitive around fundraising, making sure we have a sustainable model for the association, and making sure it's affordable for organizations to participate. So from a budgetary standpoint, we recognize that dues from the organization will be a very, very small part of our budget. So we're thinking of how we can start in a way where we can have direct impact, but also build the organization in a way that's very cost effective. So in launching the Alliance, we have some key pieces that we're working on around startup funding and creating a role where we have a dedicated team member to support the work. Finding ways that we can start our work around priorities, particularly with COVID, and helping support the sector through critical discussions. And there have been so many great efforts that individual organizations and leaders of the sector have taken on throughout this process, but we know that they need support. So tons of great conversations, but how do we make sure that those things continue moving forward? Because we know everybody has so much on their plate right now. And then starting the work of promoting the Alliance is the last piece that we're looking on with our next phase. So we are, and I'll share this piece, but I'm not going to focus on this piece. We have been responding to inquiries around fundraising and investments that folks are wanting to make. And we know that we have some benchmarks that we have to hit before we can truly launch the work of the Alliance. But we are navigating through that and making progress in that direction. So that's the overall concept. And I know that there was a question posed in the chat, working with the Iowa Department of Economic Development. So Paul, do you want to respond to that, or I feel like I'm talking too much?
No, you're doing great. And so yes, the IEDA, and then to echo Cassandra's point, a lot of this is already happening. So for example, when the surveys went out regarding COVID, I know that the Iowa Volunteer Commission, United Ways of Iowa, including Deanne Cook, and then later for the second iteration of that survey, us at the center, we worked with the IEDA to put together that survey, the kinds of questions that would be asked. And then you and I took all that information in, and they produced, right, kind of the results of those surveys. And so, we see this work going on all across Iowa. So it's not like this work isn't already happening. I mean, development's happening, capacity building is happening, obviously here with the Community Foundation here. And so the question is will Iowa benefit greater or not from a statewide association? And I think, Cassandra, maybe you mentioned, 33 states have them, 7 states do not. The 33 states that have them also have, community foundations, also have university centers. And so the question really is for groups that we talk to, is whether or not the state of Iowa is going to be better served through something like this alliance. And we had Tim Delaney, who spoke to, I think, some of you who were on this call last month. Tim is the CEO of the National Council of Nonprofits. He helped set up and start up the Arizona Nonprofit Association. And we've had, as part of the feasibility study, members of the Nonprofit Association of the Midlands, which is the Nebraska version of a statewide association, and they also serve parts of Western Iowa. And so we've had, the head of, Ann Hindry, I think, also on this call or on a similar call a month ago. And from the perspective of the people who have been working on this for a while, it's been pretty clear that there are vast opportunities that an alliance might be able to bring to strengthen a lot of what's happening, in parts of Iowa, right? So what's happening in Des Moines and surrounding areas, what's happening in Waterloo and surrounding areas, Dubuque, and then in those rural communities as well. And so, that's really kind of the effort that we're trying to put forth now, is to say, well, we believe that there's a need. We think that there's a real strong case. Now, how do you go about supporting it in its first years to get to a point where it's going to be, sustainable? And to Cassandra's point, we don't expect it to be membership driven in terms of its sustainability. There's going to be lots of other, earned revenue opportunities for support, as well as sponsorships and other ways that, these organizations, our peer organizations, will have supported themselves. And so what I'm interested in hearing are the questions that people have about, how would this work? Do we really still need this? Are we sure on the why? Because why would this organization exist? Isn't this already happening somewhere else? Just to see, kind of the temperature of the people on this call about moving forward.
Thanks, Paul and Cassandra. I appreciate that. And yes, I would invite anybody on the call really to, come off mute, go on camera, or if you'd rather chat into the chat box, your questions and thoughts. And I think, oh, sorry.
Hello, this is Matthew Gilbert, and I'm in another meeting, so I have to be real quick. But this conversation is just so awesome. One of the reasons why I think there's a need to have such level of association statewide, especially in the nonprofit sector, and we can see through what the year 2020 has sort of experienced. A lot of us that work in this in the nonprofit sector. As executives, as service providers, as supporters, as donors, we're sometimes we get some of the greatest burdens put on us, and sometimes having that support and that level of relief is really important. And so I think that's another reason why, is because we got those servant leader hearts that actually we do this work, and we make this work meaningful for the communities that we serve. And I think it's important to want to also give ourselves some of that self-care, and I do think that, having such a statewide association could really look at broadening, especially on the advocacy and policy side, with our legislators, why this is advantageous and what the return on investment would really be, especially with here in the heartland with our caring hearts. So this has been an awesome conversation. Thanks again for inviting me, Brianna.
Thanks, Matthew. It's great to hear your voice. And I love the multitasking of Zoom. I can just visualize him with one earbud in each meeting. So I think that he brought up a point that, you discussed around, when COVID relief was coming out, many nonprofit organizations have their own advocacy agendas and are advocating on particular issues, housing, food security, etc. But there isn't necessarily that entity that has been advocating for the sector and taking care of the sector at that kind of scale. So thank you, Matthew. I have a question from Bobby Segura. So if you wanted to come on camera or voice your question, Bobby.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Bobby Segura, Women Lead Change. Just a question about the future of getting people together. I ask this because I'm a member of the downtown chamber in Des Moines, and throughout the summer, they had a regular meeting of they were for-profit and nonprofit companies organizations that got together like every other week for about an hour, just basically on a Zoom call, and just being able to connect with each other and bounce ideas off of each other. It was somewhat informal, but there was usually a question that we talked about. And I found that surprisingly, I don't know why I'm surprised, but to be just really, really valuable experience in connecting with other nonprofit leaders, just connecting with them, because a lot of us are, you know, one man show, one woman show, but actually exchanging some good ideas, maybe exchanging some information. So I think this is probably what you have in mind, but I know that that model that they used, and we're not doing it now, but that was really, really, really good. So I just throw that out there and see if that's it's probably what you envisioned, but it really did work.
Absolutely. And that's in doing the research on the national models, that's one of the points that was always emphasized, that part of the greatest value of having the association is being able to connect the members. And so there's lots of ways that we have opportunity to consider in connecting members, you know, through those kinds of conversations that you talked about, Bobby, but then also the conversations of common interest. So having a peer group of all of the housing organizations or all of the human service organizations. There's just so much opportunity to create those kind of peer groups and networks. So Paul, share your
And
thoughts.
I would just throw this in and then I'll stop talking, but I think there is an advantage to having like organizations meet with each other, but I also think there is an advantage to having the smaller organizations and the bigger organizations be able to exchange ideas. And just because they're different, and sometimes the smaller organizations need something to dream about, and sometimes the larger organizations need to remember what it was like when there was only two of you, or something like that. So thank you very much. Appreciate this conversation. It's been very, very good.
No, Bobby said it really, really well. That last point especially is very true. And this might get to Sherry's question, which is also in the chat, but talking about like, where is your professional home if you're someone who's serving, you know, kind of as your, like, you know, that 1 or 2 staff members, which is a lot of nonprofits in the state of Iowa, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 paid staff members, where is your professional home? Certainly you might be a professional fundraiser, or you might be a CPA, or you might be an attorney, you know, you might have other professional associations, but really is that your professional home in terms of all the hats that we expect a lot of nonprofit leaders to wear in what they do? And so that's also, I think, the benefit, to Cassandra's point, that we heard back from other state associations, people saying, well, this is my professional home, this is my association that represents really who I am as a professional, and you know, what I do, the impact that I have through doing that work. So yeah, really great points, Bobby.
There was another question in the chat around partnership. And I know that it was talking about various chapters of associations of fundraising professionals. So I'm going to answer that question in 2 ways. One of the other key takeaways that we had from national research is how some of the associations have aligned philanthropy along with the association. And that is something also that we are exploring. How do we align with our philanthropic partners? But the other statement that I will make about partnership that is much bigger is partnership will be welcomed in many different ways. So as we think about membership, really the way that we've defined it at this point is any kind of 501c is welcome to be part of the association. And then we are also exploring how we create corporate memberships or student memberships and individual memberships. There's lots of opportunity there, but from a partnership standpoint, as a new organization and wanting to do the best for the sector, that is something that we are open to and will explore and will respond to based on membership suggestions. So.
Great. And I see some of the comments in the chat. You know, I think we will plan on continuing to convene community circles into 2021. And so, you know, we recognize that that was an opportunity to bring folks together. And as we're designing what the future of these looks like, you know, we have had several breakouts where it was like larger EDs of larger organizations or smaller organizations, because I'm hearing what you're saying around, you know, there's different needs at different organizational stages, and then there's potential for that cross-pollination, but also you want opportunities to get together with folks who are maybe in your same zone as far as your field of interest. So we'll try and continue to do our best, and please feel free to let me know, for our upcoming convenings, what would be most beneficial to you, because I think we're committed to that, and we're, continuing to be in conversation with Cassandra and Paul about how this concept is evolving. So I'm seeing the employee benefits piece. So maybe that's something that we could have a conversation around, and figuring out what are the barriers now that we would need to have an advocacy effort around. So, I'd love in a follow-up to learn a little bit more about how we can educate the sector about where we are, and then understand where we want to go with opportunities like that, and then what work needs to get done in the middle, and is a nonprofit association best positioned to do that, and how can we come together with all these other partnerships to kind of accomplish that shared vision. So yeah.
The one final comment that I'll share just really quickly is, and I just want to share such an appreciation in the Community Foundation and for all of the work that you do. And again, thinking about the power of the association, it's an opportunity to bring all of Iowa together, which not all of the nonprofits across Iowa have access to resources like the Community Foundation here in Des Moines. So again, we don't want to replace anything that's happening right now, but we certainly want to make something inclusive that helps the entire sector across the state. So
I see another question from Matthew about any upcoming RFPs. So I don't know if there's anything else with the next phase of this implementation work that would involve an RFP.
Not anything I can point to specifically right now. So Paul, I don't know if you have a different thought about potential RFPs.
I think it'll depend very much on how kind of these first conversations about, financial support go, right? So just where are we with financial support? And then what does that potentially allow those first steps to be? I can say that, and I agree with this, and this was Tim Delaney's point. When Arizona and other states have tried to start this, it's one of those situations where, bare minimum funding that just kind of gets, keeps the ball rolling a little bit, has generally yielded less than positive results. So the sense is you're going to have the resources initially to build something that people want to be a part of, that they initially have a lot of sense of, I want to belong, to that. Again, not to substitute something that's already great that exists in their communities. And I'm probably privileged because I get to work with all sorts of great community foundations across the state, and in Northeast Iowa and Dubuque and Cedar Rapids and elsewhere. But that's really kind of one of the major points was, this thing has to be, if it's going to work, it probably has to have some good 2 or 3 year funding, some real clear steps about what it wants to accomplish. There's got to be a lot of buy-in that people want this to work because they see themselves, advancing both their organizations and the sector. And so all those interests have to align, and we think we're doing that. We think we're making that case. But if we don't, then, I don't know, if the future of this, will be successful. I think the buy-in has to be pretty great from a host of organizations across the state, in my estimation. Cassandra, you've come to this a little bit later than I, but at the beginning of this, I feel like that's where we are.
Great, thank you. And I've zoomed everybody from the breakouts back. So if they're rejoining, we have the recording of this presentation will be published on our YouTube site. So if you enjoyed those breakouts but still want to get this information about the Nonprofit Association, that'll be out there. And Paul and Cassandra, I can connect you for deeper conversation with them. I did want to share, Paul had mentioned an opportunity through the Iowa Nonprofit Resource Center to participate in the MCN annual conference. So I popped the link in there, and there's a discount code, right, for $50 off, Paul? Is it partner? Is that right?
Partnership, very appropriately.
Partnership. Okay, yes. So I'm going to say discount code. Oop, I don't know what just happened there. Discount code equals partnership for $50 off. So if you are interested in conferences in the age of COVID, so virtually, this is an opportunity coming up, and kind of to the economy of scale point that Cassandra and Paul had shared, because of the involvement of the Learned A. Waterman Iowa Nonprofit Resource Center, my favorite organization to say, tongue twister. You can use the discount code partnership and get a great discount on that opportunity. So thank you everybody for participating today. I just wanted to tee up that our final community circle of 2020 will be coming up on the 16th. And we're really going to spend some time in that session talking about purpose and setting intention going into 2021. We've got to kind of refill our cups for a new year. I think we talk a lot about, burnout in the sector and the opportunity to have reflective time and how important that is. So that'll be our topic on the 16th, and we'll have some resources that we share as well. If you don't yet receive our nonprofit link newsletter, the reminder that I sent out for this session today, in my signature, I have a little link down there where you can go ahead and sign up so that you can stay up to date on all these kinds of announcements and opportunities. So I'll see if we can squeeze in this information about the MCN conference before it goes out. And then I really wanted to thank DSM Hack for being with us as well this morning. It's been amazing to be able to partner with the Hack folks over the years. They really helped us to envision Give DSM 1.0, and we've recently unveiled 2.0. So they're an incredible resource, and it looks like those conversations were really fruitful in the breakouts as well. I'm always happy when people don't take advantage of coming back to the main room right away, and you're wrapping up great conversations. So appreciate all of you for being here today. I always like to let you go maybe 1 minute early so you can make it to your 9:30 on time. And just have a wonderful rest of the week. Look forward to seeing you again soon in this space. So thanks again. Talk to you later. Bye.